All right, welcome to Inside the Game with coaches Jim Evans and John Blomstrann. And Felice Duffy is our special guest tonight. We're really happy to have her. We've all known each other for quite some time. I'm going to give you a quick bio of Felice. It can't be quick, but it's an amazing life. She went to E.O. Smith. It was before soccer was just getting started on the women's side. She went to UConn, and there was no team. And she used to come and watch the guys' games, as did many people. And she fell in love with the game, so she started a team. And it was not quite as simple as that. They told her to wait and this and that, and she didn't want to wait. So she had to bring up the Title IX issues to the athletic director. And as a student at UConn, she started the team. So that's how I met her. I think I reffed one of the first club games or something like that. But at any rate, it went from there, and the team became very good very quickly. She made All-American. The team made the Nationals, all that kind of stuff. Felice made the first women's national team. And back then, early 80s, there really weren't a lot of places to play. So the players had to make it happen, and she did that. She went and played in tournaments. I remember going to Boston and going up with 7 players and beating good teams that had 15 players. They didn't like that too much, but that's how it went with her crew. And after college, she went into coaching, and she coached Yale University women for about 10 years. They weren't very good when she took them over, and she helped them become good, but it was a battle. And she's going to talk about a lot of these things. And we always said to Felice, you should be a lawyer. You know, she loved arguing, and I never saw her lose an argument. And she'd argue for this one day and win, then she'd argue for that the other day and win. And I'm like, I'm not arguing with you anymore, you know. And she said, you should be a lawyer. So of course, she became a lawyer. She went to Quinnipiac Law School, and I think she graduated, if not first in her class, in the top, 2. And she's had a great law career. She was a public prosecutor, and she worked in private firms, and she has her own law firm now, and she does a lot of Title IX work for colleges, for college athletes, and others. So that's a quick history of Felice. A lot of the stuff I know and remember, we agreed beforehand, Felice and I, that we wouldn't divulge a lot of that stuff because both of us would be in trouble. But times were different back then. And, anyway, we're really glad she's here. And I guess I want to kick it off, Felice, by asking you, do you still feel like you do any coaching now that you're officially out of coaching and that you're a lawyer?
So Jim and John, thanks for having me. It's great to see you guys. It's great to be here. We just talked a little bit about this, but it's so cool to have started out my soccer career with both of you, because both of you were my coaches at one point, and that had lent itself so much to my love of the game and love of a good game. And I really appreciate that. And it's so cool. We're like back in the same place. I feel like I'm starting from the good place again. So it's nice. It's really nice to see. I'm so glad you're doing this. It was great to see Austin on here. It was great to see Bill Swartz. This is for me, the whole point of playing and coaching soccer, when you find people that think the same way you do and like the same thing about soccer the same way you do. because it's really a lifestyle and the connections you make in that. And so here we are. So I do want to say I got my Yale sweatshirt out. I coached 85 to 95. So I'm old. That was a long time ago. There is a little stain there. That was from the old days. I couldn't get it out. And, in terms, I want to just also include that John would also be included in our prohibition on telling stories. So you don't get out of that, John. You were involved in probably not as many as Jim and I, but definitely some of them. So we've probably forgotten more than we can remember about all of those great times we had. So Jim, with respect to your answer, it's funny because when I went to law school, after I had decided not to coach anymore, which is another story, but I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do until I went to a trial practice class, and it gave me the same feeling I had as being in a game. It was about preparing beforehand, how much you could prepare, and then literally you work as hard as you possibly can, and then you get to like the trial, and you don't know what's going to happen. The judge was the ref, the jury was the fans, you don't know what the weather's going to be like, and then you just have to just adjust, and you go into it with dignity, respect, and integrity, and you stay within the rules, but you play right up there against the rules, but you stay within them. And it just reminded me so much of playing. And I talk to people all the time, to law students now about that, and to athletes, because a lot of athletes do go into law, and are actually CEOs of companies because of the competitive nature of them. So now in the last 5 years, when I've been working with students, faculty, and staff across the country, I don't work for the schools. I mean, I would, and I certainly help, but I work more against them, representing people in student conduct issues and Title IX stuff, which is sexual harassment and misconduct, which is a big topic these days. But just with coaches and in terms of employment, I end up really feeling like I'm coaching again. And as I said before, except my knees don't hurt afterwards. My back hurts. I'm sitting all day, but my knees don't. Because when you're talking to somebody who's being accused of something, or I represent both sides, I've represented female athletes as survivors of sexual misconduct. I've represented male athletes as respondents and accused people of sexual misconduct. And I represented female respondents and male survivors, because there's a lot that goes into that, or any kind of student conduct issue. But I really feel like it's such a time and a place from 18 to 22 when you're in a place to educate kids again, because really soccer was about educating students. I mean, that really, I believe, that's my belief, not about winning and losing, although love to win, no question about it, and that's the goal. But it was about educating kids. And I know you guys think this because you pass this on to me, that it's about respect for yourself, respect for the other team, how you act with dignity, and throughout the process. And I talk about this. If it's an athlete, I'm like, you got a hearing next week? That's game day. We're doing practice now. You get ready, you focus on the game day. You're not focused on get kicked out of school or staying in school. But really talk to them about the same things I said in soccer that matter. Like, you can't do anything about what you did in the past. Can't do anything about it. You're here today. If you're fit, that's great. If you're prepared, that's great. If your ACL is a little hurt, you're just here. And all you can do is control your attitude and your work ethic. That's really all you control. You can't control the opponent. You can't control the ref. So all you got to just go forward with this and do your best, and look back on this in 10 years and be proud of that you went through it this way, and learn from your mistakes. All the people I worked in all the different places, you said I was a federal prosecutor, which you go do a DOJ background check. So I passed that, just so you know, Jim and John based even on all our stories. But I talked about the things I did that, I got in trouble a little bit with the law, minor stuff, but I talked about that. And that is really what a lot of athletes are, gregarious, and they're risk takers, and they do those kind of things, and you push the boundaries. But I talk about that because one of the things, if you're first in your class and you go to the Ivy League schools, you never have anything happen to you in your life. How does someone know what's going to happen if you're in employment and something bad happens? Don't know, right? If nothing bad's ever happened. But when you can say, no, I had this really bad thing happen, but I've learned from it, and it was adversity, and this is how I reacted to it, and I learned, and I did all these good things. And so anyway, the answer to that, long-winded, now I'm sounding like someone else I just talked about, But I feel like this is all about what coaching's about, which is educating kids.
Definitely. So, John, you had a question or two, I think, for Felice, or maybe a comment that'll get things going.
Yeah, comment first. Jim sort of sounded almost like Felice went to UConn thinking she should start playing soccer, but since my background's in stores as a coach, I wanted to say that the Duffy family was big and famous for soccer, and Felice had a great bunch of girls and women she was playing with at E.O. Smith who were very good before she got to UConn. And really, UConn women's team was a missing piece for her. It wasn't like she was starting from scratch. And I've done very little coaching with women, but we did have a club team that Felice did all the organizing for. It was called the Bolter Bolts, and we went out to a national tournament in St. Louis, and that was some of the most fun coaching that I had, even though I've coached boys for most of my life. So, yeah. So as far as the question, I don't know. Felice was such a, player that didn't really need a lot of coaching, I thought, because she was a leader on the field. So I guess the question, Felice, is what would you say to young girls in particular, if they want to be a good player? How can they sort of do it for themselves outside of what their parents are telling them and outside of what maybe the coaches are giving them on a practice basis?
Okay, well, so thanks, John. I do want to clear up a little bit about the history of soccer because this is being recorded. So it's so hilarious. And I want to just also say, which I say anytime now, because I speak and I always say, like, this is my best recollection. I don't know if it's actually true. You guys know sometimes I put you all on one team that played together when all the great stars were there, even though you didn't go to school at the same time. But because memories get conflated, and so this is but I actually didn't play soccer at E.O. Smith, but my younger sister did, and everybody else did, and E.O. Smith won the state championship. So this is related to soccer. Lenny Santiris, who was the soccer coach at UConn for 30-something years, after he was a student teacher at E.O. Smith, and I was in his PE class. I'm going to say this. I hope Lenny's watching. He's going to deny it. But I was there, and I was, I didn't like high school. I was actually a farmer. I showed sheep. I didn't play soccer. And I was in PE, and we could choose between like volleyball and soccer. And I was like, I'll play soccer. And I went over. I was the only girl. And Lenny, who was new to probably the United States as well as everything else, said, you can't play her. Girls don't play soccer.
Wow.
Just so you know, this is our year. Hi, Lenny.
At the beginning.
Right. So he let me. He goes, well, you're not too bad for a girl. That's the first time I played at E.O. Smith, but they won. I think they won states before I left. But I was literally walking. Well, this is my literal memory. Walking over across Storrs campus to go to apply to be a veterinarian, and I got lost and walked over McMahon Hill. And this is where it gets a little fuzzy about details. But it was a night game. And it was Brown against UConn, and it was a game that was in overtime. And hopefully Brown and UConn played back then. And they had those old lights before Maroney Stadium. I don't know if you guys remember, right? The old lights that were out there, you could barely see. And I swear, I looked at it, and it was like Field of Dreams. Everybody was around there, and I could sense this really cool energy. I couldn't see it, and I walked over, and I got through. And I know I want to say Franz and Medrick were playing together, but I'm pretty sure they didn't play at the same time at UConn, did they?
They might not have overlapped.
No, they did not.
It may have been Medrick. And Franz is another person. I don't know if you guys are going to ever talk to him, but he was part of this group. He was the first person that ever coached us for the club. And thank God I met him, because he taught me about soul and passion and what it means to play without speaking and just getting it. You want to talk about someone who has joy and fun when he plays. But I saw that team, and this was when I was a senior in high school, and I thought, oh, I want to do this. So I went and actually talked to UConn, and they said, no, you can't have a team. You got to have a club for 2 years. So I did, Jim, you did ref one of our first games. Do you have a memory of this? And you want me to tell the story, or do you?
I was hitchhiking and you picked me up.
You hurt your knee. You're on crutches, and I had my.
I had hurt my knee. Yeah.
And I just pushed my VW bug down the road and got it started. And I'm like, that's Jim Evans. I'm going to ask him if he's going to ref our game. And you had a hurt knee. And I drove you to Willimantic, and you said you'd do it. And you actually showed up the next day. I couldn't believe you did. And I wasn't paying you. You just showed up and you refed. It was amazing. But during that time, we ended up filing a lawsuit, or actually a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights with the Department of Education, because UConn said no. And they told us it would take 12 years. It's funny, everybody was like, you were so courageous to file it. To tell you the truth, I didn't think it was courageous. I was like, I just want to play soccer. I didn't know. I didn't understand when the athletic director said, we'll kick you out of school if you do this. I just thought, who cares if I go to school? I just didn't believe him. That might be my stubbornness, Jim. I think you might have been a good lawyer too, Jim, just so you know, in terms of arguing and being persistent. But so, it just so happened that, and I'm saying this because it is history of soccer and women's soccer, that I got a letter from the Office for Civil Rights. It was the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare back then. And they said, they're in compliance with Title IX. And I was just like, how could that be? And drove to Boston. It might have been the first time I ever drove out of Connecticut, missed Massachusetts, went up to Maine, turned around, came back, went back to Boston. I talked to someone there, and they went out and looked at their file, and they actually said, you're right, your file's been moved to the back. And it turns out there was about 100 or so cases that had just been sort of moved during that time. And because of that, they wrote and said, you're going to be out of compliance and you'll get all federal funding taken away. And so, it just happened, and UConn did not want that to happen, because basically it was going to be taking money and time away from Joe Moroni, as you know, which wasn't fair because he'd fought so hard for his own soccer. But after the little transition, UConn was great because they backed us up. We got third in the country, and it was the AIW, NCAA stuff that was going on, which was pretty cool. But one of the things too, and this is what I haven't coached since really the early 2000s, but I don't think, this is the other thing I think I told you, Jim, I don't know if you mentioned it, but I do have my PhD in sports psychology. And that was so that I could keep going to school, so I could keep trying out for the national team, so I could have some way to make money because I got student loans. They're all paid back. I did all that. But when you talked about us playing, and John, when we did Boats for Boats, we had some sponsorship, but it was just those of us who had never been able to play and were just hungry. I mean, we'd show up at a place, even if there wasn't a ball, we'd wrap something up and just play with it. We'd tip over garbage cans. I mean, Jim, you know how many times we played in, at Cole Park, and how we worked on tactics in the parking lot for hours afterwards. Or you guys now, I mean, I haven't seen you in a long time, but if we showed up in a parking lot and we had a few minutes, we'd probably end up playing, at this point, walking soccer, right? I mean, we did. That's what we did. We just loved it. And I think from what I've seen, and I did coach for 10 years at Yale, and I stay involved in the game, and I stay involved from this perspective, talking to kids. What I would say to a girl or a boy, because I've coached both, because I'm not sure it's that, I mean, I definitely think there's differences, but they're cultural. I don't think they're biological, but there's certainly cultural differences. If they wanted to be a good player, I think I would say that you need to play all the time, practice on all surfaces with all different kinds of equipment. I would say play unsupervised. The last thing you want to do is play in a supervised place, maybe once out of every 10 times you play, but learn to play from that inner drive so you get to understand the game. It's, if you can watch it on TV, I would say outside of the United States, but that would be my old elitist bias I have against American soccer. I know we're a lot better now, and I will tell you, I saw some of your interviews you did. I am a little bit of an elitist with soccer. I can barely watch it, especially when it's women's soccer, because I start coaching and yelling, so I'm not good to watch with. But I was really impressed with Jill Ellis as a coach. It was so nice to see great athletes and great individuals out there playing like a team, because I thought there was a more individual emphasis. It just was really nice to watch, and to see all those players doing that. It was really refreshing for me. It was the first time I could actually sit through games. So thank you, Jill. Whoever, was out there, I really appreciated it. But But really, for kids that are good, you gotta find the joy and the hunger in soccer. You gotta find that. If you don't have it, you're not going to be sustained. Play without uniforms. Play without coaches. Play without the best equipment. Play like we used to play. And I'd also say play different sports. I know this has always been contrary to the wisdom. You want people focusing early on, but not early, because you pick up so much other stuff from other sports. And if you're gonna go to a club team or a college team, find a coach that you like and respect. If they're going to be your friend or your buddy, that's not a good coach. They're not your friend. They're not your parents. They're a coach. And find somebody that you want to play for, whether you're injured, whether you're hurt, whether you're, however it is, you want to be part of that team. The kids that jump around now, that I see, I think is a common problem. Whether there's a better team or there's better uniforms or there's new coaches and there's a lot of recruiting now at the young age. I think that's so bad for the sport of soccer. I would just say play as much as you can without the supervision. You don't need to pay coaches to do it. Get a ball by yourself, go juggle. Just, we used to say that, learn to love it, learn that the ball's your best friend. I mean, I wish right now I could go juggle. That would be fun for me to just be able to do that by myself. I can a little, but I'm getting a brace.
Just to comment on what you're saying, when I interviewed for the E.O. Smith job, it was right before the 1980 season. The Library Media Center, Felice knows, had big windows, and it had like a square right behind it of grass. And every time I came to E.O. Smith for an interview or to talk to somebody before I got the job, there were players playing out there with no coach, no uniforms. And I just said, wow, this is the place I want to be, because there was that passion for just having pickup games, which I think has diminished a little bit over the years.
Well, and that's what you see in other countries too, right? They used to talk about that. The kids would wrap up masking tape or what Pele played with, whatever you had out there. It's funny, when I was coaching at Yale, and I would love to talk to I didn't stay in touch with a lot of people because I had left and done other things. But God, I'd like to know what kind of impact I had on them. If anyone's listening, I apologize. I'm not sure exactly, because I was pretty hardcore, but I think I treated them well in terms of soccer. But I do remember coming out, because I really did think that it was about learning to be a good, person with respect. I remember coming out to Yale to coach, and there was this, you guys have been to the Yale soccer stadium, right? It's always been this beautiful field or pitch. It was 120 by 75. That's where we practiced. That's where we played. I remember walking out. There's all these players in these beautiful, great, all the uniforms you're given for practice that we never had. They had 25 blown up, beautiful, brand new balls, trainers sitting out there. I remember walking out. Practice started at 4. It's like 10:04. And everyone was sitting around talking to each other. And I was just like, if we ever, we saw ball anywhere we were playing. And I just stood there and I did nothing, because, that's kind of how if you don't know, that's kind of how I train. I like to see what people do. I just watched, and it got to 4:05 and 4:10. This is a difference. When Lenny used to come, because Lenny ended up being there my last year, when he used to come to practice, and he'll tell you this, I think, because we were on the crappy little bumpy fields, because we didn't get the good fields because we were women, with crappy balls. And, we had those shirts that had V-necks that didn't tie up because we got secondhand stuff. Yeah. But it was nice of coach to give them to us. But it actually was nice of him to do that. But he would come out to practice and we'd already be playing. Mm-hmm. And he'd leave and we'd still be playing. We just played. I mean, could you imagine if you had kids like that? I mean, maybe you do, Jim, at Thomas. Maybe John, that's what happens at E.O. Smith. But that is so rare. And ultimately, the kids were like, what are you doing? I'm like, listen, let me just tell you something. What are you doing? And that began my philosophy at Yale. Like, you've got soccer balls here. Like, people don't have, this is the time to learn and, ultimately use this time in a way to, if you're not hungry enough to have great stuff like that out there to do that, I'm not sure you should be playing. Why are you playing? What's the point? You have so many other things you can do in your life.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's changed a lot. And I've been in a lot of discussions about that. And I hear from coaches, they tend to blame it on the kids. And it's not the kid's fault. It's the system where, it's very common for a kid today who's a travel player, a club elite player, to spend more time in the car than they do on the field. And people think nothing of driving a couple hours to training each way, and for an hour and a half training session, and doing that 3 times a week, and then going all over the place for tournaments. And that's not the kid's fault. That's the parents' fault. And I just look at that and say, wow, what if these kids spent all those hours at the local park or in the backyard with their friends just playing? They'd be so much better than if they drove 2 hours to play on some other team because, I'm getting a little carried away now, but it's a big problem. And there's a guy named Graham Ramsey. I don't know if you remember him, John, an English guy. He's amazing. He came to UConn maybe your first year. It was before I was there for preseason, and he ran the preseason. I don't know if he did that when you were there or not, but he's a great coach. And he is big on kids. Matter of fact, we're going to have him on the show one time. It's called Acorn Soccer. I can't remember. It's an acronym. I can't remember what it stands for. But what it is, it's these leagues that the kids themselves set up. They set up the league, they set up the teams, and it's all driven by the kids. And it's very successful. I'm going to find out more about that and have him come on. I think that's just a great thing because, all this money in youth soccer is being wasted, in my opinion. Just play. And I wouldn't trade I wouldn't have minded growing up in Holland. I was just going to say I wouldn't trade my soccer upbringing for anybody's, but in a way I wouldn't. It didn't start early enough, so that was too bad. My first time I kicked the ball, I was 14, but I played 11 or 12 high school games a year, but I probably played 100 pickup games a year from age 14 to age 22, at least 100. Every night in the summer, every night in the spring. And it was with Jamaicans a couple nights. It was with the Portuguese one night. It was with the Polish one night. And I learned all these different ways of playing. We never had a ref. It was shirts against skins. And, you argued for every inch because you had to, or the other team would win the game and you'd have to go off and some other group would come on. And it was awesome. I absolutely loved it. The first real coach I ever had was in college. And the reason I was able to play it at that level in college was because of all those pickup games.
I just want to be one thing for defensive players, kids today. I mean, we were in the middle of a baby boom, and we had probably 25 kids on my street.
Right.
At a field that we could walk to. And it's different, population dynamics, different safety issues. And I think we just had a lot of advantages when we grew up that don't exist now in Mansfield. I know, just because of everybody's spread out and there's not as many people around.
No question. And there's safety issues and there's liability issues and all those things. I understand that. That's why I say I don't blame the kids. The kids are different now only because they haven't been taught the life lessons of sports and things like that. That's why they're different. And we teach it to them at Thomas, and they love it. They love learning these lessons, And it's too bad they're only learning them when they're 18 or 19, because we learned them. I had 5 older brothers. I learned them when I was 5,
Well, I had 9 siblings, so
yeah, some of them, Some of the lessons you learn for sports don't do you that well in society too, though, you know. But
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think what we're saying is legit about there's so many differences now. And there are social and cultural differences. You know, in the old days, and this is my sports psych research I did, which is dated, but they used to show that there are cultural studies that empirically show that sports was a socialization path to teach people how to achieve in a capitalistic society. So they learn how to win and lose in what's called an artificial environment. It's a game. It's important, but it's a game. So if you lose, you just lose a game. But because our culture shifted around to be the game is more important than anything. When you're 7 years old and you have to bring home a trophy for whether it's your parents or your coach or whatever, it's no longer safe. I hate to use that word because it's a scary word these days. Good in some senses, but scary in some. But, you know, when you're not safe to not be able to lose, it shifts what sports was meant for in our society. And then you've got, you know, the whole computer social media thing where kids aren't playing, they're learning artificial things. That's a problem. And I don't like to blame the parents. You know, I hear what you're saying, but it's also, there was an influx from my perspective, and I'm not blaming anyone, but there was an influx of coaches that I think took advantage of the parents and the kids that started these club systems. And they didn't all have English accents. People used to say that, oh, you know, if they're British, they're good coaches. But that took advantage of that and really ramped it up and started pumping all this money into it rather than doing. And I'm not sure it was intentional, but they wanted to market it and, you know, make money. But what you're talking about, what Graham Ramsey did, or the Acorn games, all that is so important for somebody to put back into the system. It'll take parents less time. You're not going to be traveling like that. You're not going to be spending money like that. Kids are going to be safe. They are going to learn the lessons. The thing I was going to say, when you have coaches now that want to teach the kids the right lessons, and I mean lessons as in, look, if you know, are disrespectful or you're the best player on the team and you don't practice hard, you don't get to play. You know, that doesn't happen anymore. You're the best player on the team. And if you don't play, the kids are going to the president of the college. The parents are going to the president of the college. You know, it's so rare when you get good players like that and you get good parents like that. You cherish them, right? Because they let you do your job. But it's far and few between. And these are the coaches I talk to that are, you know, beloved. They're the people that are the ones that teach you these great lessons. I mean, I sacrificed as a coach. I sacrificed winning some games to teach a real lesson. I took one of my best player out of a sweeper when we were not good and we needed her in. She wanted to be a striker, but I took her out because she said something like, I'm bored playing back here in front of all the non-starters, a little more than that. And I just took her butt right out and stuck a freshman. I think I terrified the freshman. I'm like, go play sweeper, because you just don't do that, right? But, you know, to sacrifice those things, even in sports, once, it teaches you to be a better team later on. So it's all a building. It's all foundation. You've got to be willing to sacrifice that. Well, do ADs let coaches sacrifice that? No. You got to win, right? You know, and to parents and to kids. So it's so hard to be a coach now. And when you find a good coach, I think there's a book called Why Good Coaches Quit. But it's so hard now in this day and age with all this going on. If you find an athletic department, there are some out there that support coaches. And Jim, you're coaching now, right? You're in a place, I don't know what's going on. I haven't spoken to you, so this is not about anything, but you're in a place where people know who you are and support you. That's really important because you got to have that flexibility and latitude to be able to do the things you want to do. So it's just, anyway, I think it's really such an important cultural place we're at. You know, every kid goes to a tournament. This was on, you know, Brian Gumbel's thing the other night. You know, every kid gets a trophy. They buy 6 million trophies and give it to every, I mean, what's that about? How does that, I mean, who cares? You're not playing for the trophy. So anyway, I know I'm going old school on you.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, you know, you hear people complaining about the millennials and all the trophy. Those kids didn't ask for those trophies. The parents got them the trophies, you know.
And the coaches and the association.
And the coaches, yeah. But you know, the monetization of youth sports, particularly soccer, is outrageous. And, you know, these coaches that are these club coaches, they got to make a living. And the only way they're going to make a living is by charging the kids a lot of money to play on the team. And they coach a couple of the teams, and that's how they make their living. And, you know, it's tough because even, you know, soccer camps now, you know, we used to do soccer camps, and it was before the club days, and we used to have big camps. And now, you know, the club runs a camp, and they tell the kids and the parents, not every club, but many clubs, you know, if you don't come to our camp, you can't play on the team. So the kid has the same coach all season. Then they have the same coach in the summer for the week at camp. That doesn't make any sense, you know. Let them have somebody else. But it's all been monetized, and that's the way it is. That's why I want to get Graham Ramsey on here to tell us about Acorn Soccer, and I want to try to. Where I live, club isn't a big deal. There's clubs, but you know, I'm in a rural area, and there's still plenty of town soccer, and it seems to be okay there.
So you want to know why we were successful at Yale?
Yes.
I'm just thinking about this, so hopefully I won't offend anybody, because I am thinking about it. Because when I went there, Maggie Dunlop, who was actually the first varsity coach at UConn, because Jim, you know that, you were her assistant coach.
I got fired on the first day.
I thought we weren't telling these stories.
Do you remember?
I thought we weren't telling these stories.
Oh, this is a good one, though.
Oh, okay. That was when I was on my dirt bike coming to find you to talk you into taking the job.
Yeah.
I remember, but you just didn't leave, so we all listened.
Felice showed up at my house on this little Vespa motor scooter to talk me into taking this assistant coaching job, and she'd already worked it out with the boss, and so I did it, you know, and so I go the first day, and we play 5-on-2 keep away. They call it rondos now, but the German 5-on-2 keep away. That's how everyone started their sessions. So I'm doing it, and I'm showing the kids how to support a little bit and how the defenders need to not get caught square. And she says to me, I want to see you after training. So I go see her after training. She goes, I got to fire you because you know more than I do. I can't have you around. And I said, well, and she goes, I'll pay you all the money. It was like $1,000, you know, for the season. She goes, I'll pay you all the money, but you can't come back. And I said, I just passed up like 3 high school jobs to take this job, so I'm coming back. And I just kept coming every day. And she got tired of, you know, telling me I was fired, so I stayed the whole season.
I will say Maggie was good. Maggie played on the Irish national team. I would support that story. And I think she was threatened by a gym, and that happened a lot back then. But I think as she learned that you did so many good things for our team, and you were such a, you know, I'm not sure people know this about you, but all you care about is the game.
What's that?
All you care about is the game and respect, and the people that are in the game is what I'm saying, how you play it. And I think that made her more comfortable to understand you weren't out to be the head coach. You just wanted us to support right on 5-on-2, which is kind of a beautiful thing. Well, she went to Yale, and Lenny came in, and that's another whole story, but we won't get into that. And anyway, when she left Yale, apparently she told me that she had recommended me, which maybe was her payback. I don't know. Because when I went there, they were maybe like 0-22 in Division I. And this is, you know, when I went to UConn, there was only 3 teams in the entire country that played soccer, Division I, II, III, NAIA, anything. There were no teams. So, you know, Ivy Leagues had teams coming up. But I remember going there and, you know, to be in the Ivy League now even, but even then, no scholarships, D1, you know, North Carolina's in there, UConn's in there. Everyone's pumping Title IX stuff and throwing money at them in scholarships. But what I did, because like you, John, like you, Jim, like Bill, like Franz, I think like Austin, like all of us, you know, you want to educate people about the game and you develop them. And even though it's hard to develop players at the college level, right? I was teaching people that hadn't played how to play soccer at the college level, but it's important to me. So I didn't have the luxury of going out and, you know, getting the best players because of the academics. they actually had academics there and the scholarships. But I also, I would have kids that would come in and say, well, I'm interested, but, I've played since I was 7 as the outside back on these brilliant premier teams. And I played outside back on the U.S. under 16, under 18 national team. And I was like, great, but, you're going to be my best player. You're not playing outside back. You're going to be in the middle of the field somewhere or everywhere, right? And they couldn't do it. They didn't want it. They wanted to play outside back. So I actually really recruited people that I liked. And I mean, I liked in terms of their attitude and their work ethic. I didn't, there were players that were better players that I didn't recruit for that reason. And kids that wanted to be developed and to do all that and trained. And we did strength and conditioning and we played as much as we could. And the year, I believe, before we went, I could be a little off with these times, but I was, I had a good team and I needed help and I wanted help. It was just kind of me with some assistant coaches that were all great. And I called Bill Swartz, who was out of Pomona, right? And he flew out for my preseason.
Wow.
And he coached for 2 weeks with me. How fun is that, right? You know who else came over a few times? Bob Ukrainian. He was over at Southern. He also doesn't think girls should play soccer. Hey, Bob. And he didn't back then. He'll kill me if I say that, but regardless, he would come over. I'd be like, Bob, I just need someone to talk about this kind of, doing this, because these were all great people. And then, Jim, I might have been that summer beforehand that you had my 3 players. Remember Jill, Patty, and Laura come to Maine with you and Bill? And it was a camp and they were counselors, but you guys taught them more in those 2 weeks that they came and played. And we also went to Italy that June or July or May before we went there. And I remember this is sort of just encompasses everything we're talking about. Aside from playing in front of the Army with machine guns, because some judges have been blown up on a bridge, which was a little intimidating. The players got there and we had these beautiful uniforms and we looked good and everybody was really, really fit. And I'm just like, oh God, because you can't teach someone who hasn't played soccer what it means to understand the game. But we went to play our first game and these women came out to play in their uniforms, like t-shirt, shorts. They had babies with them. They put stuff down. Our team's running, doing calisthenics, pushing up. I'm like, oh, please don't do this to me. Like they're like showing them how strong they are. I'm like, push-ups have nothing to do with soccer. It doesn't matter. And we started playing and that team kicked our butts as in tactically. They didn't move. Our team's just running, exhausted. It's 2-0 at halftime, right? And our team's like, I don't get it because we're exhausted. These people went out, they had their babies on their arms, they're drinking half a beer and they're smoking a cigarette. My team's out there like, what's going on? And we lost, but they got it. Like they got it. And we went to games. And I think we went to Juventus playing a team that they killed. And after the team lost like 8-0, it was a huge, huge, huge loss. The 250,000 fans ran onto the field on both sides. And my team's like, why are they running on for the losers? Because it was about soccer and they loved it. And that's the year we came back and we beat almost every team by like a goal. The last game was Princeton and it was 2-2 and whatever. We were so much better than them, but it was the pressure. And I remember just being there at the last second overtime and somebody scored a header and everyone just laid on the ground and just couldn't even move afterwards. But it was because these kids learned what it meant to have heart and to play and to put it out on the field. I mean, I'd say to kids, I don't care if there's 1 minute left and we're losing 7-0, you better chase that ball off the field. You just better. So it was really, and I say that because it was the soccer community. John, stuff you taught me, all you guys, what we did. It's all these values, I probably should have quit that year. I stayed 2 more years, but there's that 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Do you ever have any contact with any of those women now?
The Yale players?
Yeah.
So yes, I would love to have more because I left and, kind of went away and went to law school and didn't stay in touch. And I don't think it was the age of email back then, or I didn't use it. I've seen some kids at games. I would go when Rudy Meredith was coaching, who was my assistant coach. And he was out there and he was coaching. I used to go and give the newer kids, I would talk to them about all the stuff because I talked to teams. So Rudy would have me come in and do that stuff. We do some community outreach with inner city kids and all that. So I stayed in touch with the Yale program. And one time I went out there and there's 3 or 4 kids. And, you never know when you see them later. I'm like, God, I don't know what these kids are going to think about me. And yeah, it was great to see them. I mean, we stay in touch. We're on Facebook now. I'd love to see more people. Laura Valade was a Connecticut star, and she made it into the Soccer Hall of Fame, and I saw her then. And so I stay in touch with a lot of the UConn players. We had our 30s and whatever. So yeah. I would like to stay in touch with them more. I coached when I was 25. I started for 10 years and then stopped. And, it was kind of like a move on transitional time instead of later on when I might have made more solid connections.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about advice you'd give to a kid. What about advice to a young coach who is aspiring to make a career of it?
In the United States?
In the United States.
At college?
Not necessarily college, but college, club, hybrid. A lot of coaches do both. That's how they make their living. They coach college and they coach a club team, or they run a club or something like that.
I would say to be a successful coach the way that I think success is, which is winning, because you build this great team and you recruit the right kids and you make an impact on their lives and people have a great experience. I would say, first of all, if you're a player and you're going to be a coach, got to understand big difference. Right? How much control do you lose when you become a coach? And you're just like, oh my God, if I can just go do that, give and go. So it's very different. You have to decide, do I want to be a coach? It's very different. There's a whole administrative part about being a coach as well that just comes along with any job that you got to recognize as part of it and really critical. Then there's the parents, very different than being a player. They're an essential part. I mean, at one point I was coaching under 13s and I was like, listen, I don't talk to parents anymore. I mean, that's not a good way to do it either, but you got to understand that's part of it. And I'm going to talk a little bit, it's more specifically, it's about soccer a little bit, but also a little more about college, because I think it is a little nuanced. I think what people need to understand and coaches need to understand is, the game is about the players. It's not about the coach. For me, coaching if you think that by the time someone gets into a game, they should be playing for themselves. And if they're not, I don't think it's a recipe for success. Not that you can't have a couple games where you're telling somebody to do something, but if you're screaming at people, giving them instructions, and people are looking over at the bench to see what's going on, that's not, I don't think that's good coaching. And you need to be able to let go of that control. I actually learned that by letting go of it, not wanting to. But I do remember at a game, I had a kid, I actually stayed and talked to her the other day, where they were looking at me in this big important game, and I've been teaching them. And I remember just saying, okay, I'm not talking anymore. You guys are coaching yourself. And I left for the second half. I mean, how hard is that, right? As the coach, like, oh my God. And they started to lose a team we were better than. And then you could actually literally see the leaders step up, the people that are in charge. And you see someone being a leader being born, right? You can see that. And then it lasts forever. It's amazing. And I think the most important thing a coach can do, obviously depending on level, but is to teach kids how to make decisions. How to make decisions in game pressured situations at practice, so they understand what it's like at practice. Because you're going to get a better player, you're going to get a better teammate, a better leader, a better person. And like I said before, I think, don't take the joy out of it for the kids. When you go in and people have their ideas about coaching, and again, it's a little, from my perspective, overstructured, unless you're a player and you get it. I used to, I do this all the time. I still do it now. And I talk to people about it. You're going to go have your first coach, like with ODP. It's my first session. What I do is I split them up and I watch them play. That's it. People are like, I'm all prepared. I'm like, I want to see who's the natural leader, who gets pissed off, what their attitude's like, maybe someone's just this great natural striker and that's all they do and they don't do anything else, but you can learn to use those. And you see what motivates somebody. So, the over drills, the over exercises, getting prepared for everything, really playing's the game. And if you can keep that joy in that from them and get the players, make sure you know what you want to do and get the players that you want to have on your team that are the way that you want to play. The other huge thing is make sure you have boundaries. Just really important as a coach. I can't emphasize that, not as a lawyer who represents coaches, but as players. Again, you're not their friend, you're not their parent. I was 25 when I coached, and it was a different time in terms of drugs and alcohol, in terms of not really thinking it was as big a deal. And people didn't understand the bad effects of all that. And I never drank with my team, ever. And I never swore in front of my team, ever. Well, the last time right before I quit, I did. But other than that, and you guys know me. I mean, I can be a sailor, and it's just you just got to realize everything you do, everybody's internalizing it. They're seeing you as a role model and someone that they're going to look at, for respect. And I think you have to understand too about ethics and about the rules. And it's not about teaching someone to foul versus teaching somebody to protect themselves and play hard. Very different. Because soccer is not, there was a poet at Yale when I worked there, Robert Echeverria, and he came in and talked about sports. And he said, if you're playing outside of the rules, I'm going to say this so badly, and I'm sure he's not listening, but if you're playing outside the rules, you're not playing soccer. And he said, I teach literature, and there's a sonnet, and a sonnet has so many stanzas and so many syllables, and I'm sure I'm saying this wrong with English too, but if you do too many stanzas and do too many, it's not a sonnet anymore. You don't win the competition. And it really made so much sense to me. Like you really have to be able to play the game that way and make it ethical. And that's just really important. I would also say if you're going to be a coach, make sure you have a lawyer, make sure you have an ally in your organization or in the athletic department. And I mean that for real. Make sure anything you're doing, you're making sure somebody who's in charge knows you're doing it. Because you might think this is normal. Nobody would do this. Just make sure, because not everyone sees it the same way. And the last thing I would say, and this is really what I think people need to work on, is make sure, and this is part of the leadership training, make sure that you teach kids the accountability chain. How, as a matter of a team, as a matter of a lawyer, as a matter of work or at a school, John, or wherever you are, you have to go through a chain. You go through your captains, your whatever it is. The kids shouldn't just go right to the president of the college. And if you can teach that and get the school behind you, you'll probably have a lot less trouble than most. I would say it's really, really tough time to be coaching right now, the way the world is. Really hard to coach and do it the way we're talking about, because you really get taken to task a lot.
And Jim, if I would just add one thing, it's hard to make a living coaching soccer in the U.S. I suppose it is in every country, but for me, I always thought when I was young that I would, leave high school and move up the chain from like assistant coach in college to head coach in college. And you guys know there's a lot of instability in that path. And I think it took the pressure off me because I was making money as a teacher. You know what I mean? It's hard to make money as a coach. So once I was making money as a teacher, it didn't get stale because, as you guys know, every season is completely different. You know what I mean? So I think being at a high school shouldn't be underrated, even by really serious soccer people, just because it gives you a place to live that doesn't change. It takes sort of the pressure off having to win to keep in your job. And it gives you some money. You're making 95% of your money teaching, not coaching. You know what I mean?
That's such a good point, John. And I look back at my life and I look at yours and Bob DeRico's, and you guys were a lot smarter than me because you did that. And you still are great coaches and got to coach great players and made great teams. And, and I went the other way. I put all my eggs in the coaching basket, and I've been fired a number of times, and I can't say I didn't deserve it either. At the time I didn't think I deserved it. When I look back at some of the stuff that I did to get fired, I would have fired me too, you know, and because there's pressure, you know, it's coming, you can see it coming, and you're thinking, oh my God, if I get fired, we have to move. I got to take the kids out of school. I have to go to Arkansas and whatever it is, you know, and those things happened with me. And Felice, I'll share this. When I got fired at Hartford, Felice represented me, and I wanted her to sue them and wait, let's get $1 million and this and that. And she said, Jim, you know, let's be realistic and let's be honest. And, you know, and we went over it all, and she got me a good settlement. You know, it was enough to see me through to the next, till I could get another job. And then when I got fired at Hendricks 10 years later, I didn't even have to call her. I represented myself. I had a nice meeting with the president and the athletic director. I told them I didn't agree that I should be fired. And the fact that they were doing it during the season pretty much ended my head coaching career. So they agreed to pay me a lot of money, you know, and insurance and all these things. And so it was very amicable. I don't think they expected to have to do that, but they realized, they didn't look at it that way. They didn't realize they were ending my career. I was 60 years old. They're firing me in September. Well, if you get fired from a college coaching job in September, you probably stole money or had an illicit affair. And I didn't do any of those things. So I explained that to them. And next thing you know, they were paying me my entire year's salary with insurance and kind of almost apologizing to me. And I was like, I don't want the job. You know, I'll take the money, you know, I'll move on. Well, you need a new coach. And so it's funny because my son was an assistant coach at the time in college. And he said, I'm not doing this because I see how hard you work. And I see you put your blood and soul into it, and people just are going to drop you like that. He played soccer at a high level. He played in Sweden for a couple of years professionally. And then he went on to a very nice career where soccer's a part of it, but he's not a coach. He's hiring coaches to work, to educate kids in different countries and things like that. So he saw the deal, and that there's a lot of pressure. And it's funny, I always wanted to stay at the same place for 30 years. That was my goal.
I guess most people do, probably.
Yeah, but it doesn't work that way because it's funny. I had this guy will be on the show one time too. He's a good friend, and he's about our age, and he's been a college coach his whole career, and he's retired. He never stayed anywhere more than 5 years. He moved all over, and his first AD told him to do that. And he did it. He said, because you'll do a great job for 4 or 5 years, then they'll get sick of you. And after about 7 or 8 years, they'll fire you. And he was right. That's what happened to me a couple times. And this guy, he got great jobs. He saw different parts of the country, and they were sorry to see him go each time. Whereas for me, they were like, here, let me get the door for you there, Jim, and don't let it hit you on the butt on the way out, because a lot of stuff had happened in 13 years at Hartford, you know, that they were tired of it, you know. So I would tell a young coach to do what John did. If you really love coaching, great, be a coach, but go teach. Be a teacher, or be an insurance guy, or be an accountant, and be a coach on the side. But it's not really on the side, is it, John?
No, you get totally consumed with it, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it's not financially critical.
You're not relying on it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, John, I think that's what, you'd say to any coach, right? Find your level of joy. It's not about, is high school worse than college in terms of the stigma from society, or literally coaching girls or boys. Truly, there could be cultural differences, but when you get players, they're the same, right? I mean, Jim and John, you coached us. We were women. I wouldn't say we were stereotypically women. I mean, maybe you would. We just played, right? We were hungry. We just wanted to play. We don't have the sort of saying. It was really just players at that point.
Yeah.
And right now, John, especially if you're gonna coach even at younger levels, that's more important where the good coaches are. You need people at those younger levels. Right. So John, and I know this because I've talked to kids that have played at E.O. Smith. And I'm like, oh, you play for John? Well, you got to be a good player. You're going to get, I mean, I know that about you, John, but as a coach, that's what you do. When I used to coach, say, oh, you used to play in the Virginia clubs down with John Ellis and those guys. I know you're trained, or whoever it is, so it's even more important that the better coaches are down there.
Yeah.
And I mean, down there in terms of lower educational, I don't mean down there in any other way.
Yeah, I just think the only problem with youth coaching is it's not as concentrated where you don't coach them 5 or 6 days a week. You know what I mean? It seemed like if you're coaching in the fall or whatever season you have in your state, then for that 2.5 month period, you have their full attention. You know what I mean? It's different than the off season with showing up a couple times a week. You don't get as big of an influence as a coach as when you're coaching them for like 2.5 months straight. You guys know, you've done fall seasons and stuff. Yeah, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, I love coaching. My education was, my focus was elementary school physical education. And I love coaching 5 to 9-year-olds, the best. They're the best, and I do it at camps. And we've run all these camps all these years, and I see these camps I worked at that they would give the 5-year-olds to like some high school kid to coach them or a college kid, and they didn't want to coach them, and so the kids didn't get a good experience. So I decided I'm always going to take the 5 and 6-year-olds because it's my camp and I want these kids coming back. And then I fell in love with it because they're just so much fun to work with. They're so open and they improve so much. They just love it. And you have to go with it. I did a camp in Simsbury for years, and it was the airway of Bradley Field, of Bradley Airport. And I had the 5-year-olds this 1 week. And it was the week that all the butterflies hatched. Okay. And an airplane came by like every 5 minutes. So I had about 25 of these kids. I had a high school girl helping me. And every time a plane went by, they went, look, and they watched till it disappeared over the horizon. Every time. And then a bunch of them started chasing the butterflies. And there was nothing I could do to stop this from happening. So I made 2 teams, the butterfly chasers and the airplane watchers. And they got to pick what team they were on. And we spent a good half an hour doing that every day. The deal was we would do that for a half hour, then we'd play. And they loved it. And the parents were so funny at the end of the week. I don't know what you did, but Johnny was getting up at 5 a.m, putting his shin guards on. He couldn't wait to go to practice. And I didn't have the heart to tell the lady that Johnny didn't kick a ball all week. He chased a lot of butterflies, though, But, those kids are so authentic. And most kids are at all ages, if you let them be. But in Holland, I love Dutch soccer, and I was lucky enough to be there one summer at a very impressionable age. I turned 17 there, and I played a lot. And pickup games on like a inner city basketball court. Pickup games, except they were soccer courts, and I played as much as I could with those guys. And then we'd have a game at night. And but their youth, we stayed at FC Utrecht for a week and a half, and their best coaches coached their youngest players. That's how they do it in Holland. The best coaches coach the youngest players, and it works its way up. And that makes a lot of sense. And it really explains why the Dutch develop so many great young players, because it's all about developing and they play, they work on their skills, but they play tons of small-sided games. And, that's how they do it. And we could copy that and do that. And, some do. And those kids end up being very, very good.
Well, you know what, Jim, I've worked with you at a bunch of your camps, right? And gone to a lot of them. We've done a lot of stuff together. And I have never, every time I've seen you coach, whether it's young, old, middle-aged, able, unable, girls, boys, men, women, you always have approached it with the same professionalism. It's never been different. I've never seen you, you customize it to what they mean, but it's really, I really believe you. I've said this to you before. I think you are a truly gifted educator and coach. And that's very rare. And it's cool. I am so grateful that I had the opportunity really to be coached by you and see that. Same like with Bill Swartz, right? He's got that too, where he, same with Franz and John, same with you, where you guys have been in this for so long. I feel bad because I stopped in 2000. But you guys have given so much to the game, and it's cool. And to hear you both still enthusiastic about it and loving it is great, because that's what it's about. You guys are, it's about joy. It's about having fun. It's so great that you're doing it. And I hope it survives. I hope our country doesn't drown it out of everybody.
Yeah.
Well, now I coached I didn't coach this summer for the first time because of COVID, but I coached like I said, I coached the 5 and 6 year olds at camp, and, I play with them. And it's so much fun. And I can still hang with the 5 and 6 year olds. I can still compete with them. The 7 and 8 year olds kick my butt because I can't turn, I can't stop. There's all these things I can't do, but because of my knees. But it's just a lot of fun, and the kids really learn when you play with them. You play a 1-2 with a kid, and the kid stops running because he doesn't think he's going to get it. And then you play it right where he would have been and go, don't stop, keep going. I'm going to look the other way to get everybody to look that way, but then I'm going to play it to you. And the light bulb goes on, and you see the kid do this 10 minutes later, and it's like, oh, that's really good, So
yeah, it's amazing.
Yep. Okay, well, John, do you have any more questions for Felice? Or comments?
Probably a million, but I think we covered a lot with just our conversation,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Felice? Do you want to wrap it up with anything, or?
Well, just talking with you guys reignites just all those great feelings of playing, and it makes me want to play again.
Yeah.
I don't want to get a knee replacement though. I do remember the pain I was in, but I just think, like I said, that it's so cool that you guys are doing this. It's great to see people and see the old group on here. And I hope people watch it. And I hope people learn from it and understand that this is contagious, and it's really cool. And that's really the point of playing sports, no matter who you are. So thanks for doing it. I'm glad. I'm completely honored to be on your program. And sounds like we got through this without telling some of the stories we shouldn't have.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Franz doesn't know it yet, but hopefully he's next.
Oh, good. I'm in.
Yeah.
People write in questions.
Yeah. Oh, geez. I forgot. I always forget something. There's a chat room, and I gotta remind people that they can type in questions, and well, I'm still a rookie at this, so we'll get this. We'll figure it out eventually. But anyway, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was really good, Felice. And when this COVID thing ends, I'll get down to Connecticut, and we'll have to all get together, go to Wellington Pizza, and talk about the old times.
Yeah, that'd be great. It was really good to see you both.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to end the broadcast. So again, thanks, Felice, and good to see you, and good to see you, John. See you next time.
Okay.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.